Pikachu and Ditto. I've been playing Pokemon Pokopia for the last week or so, and I've been very much enjoying it. So that's awesome. I'm very much enjoying the game. I'm still in like the first area because I really wanted to get that area built up a lot, and I'll be moving on to the beach area hopefully later today. We'll see what happens. Also, I somehow pulled off the feat of having Charizard pop out of the grass. I still don't know how that happened, but I'll take it. I was befuddled when that happened too. So I have a dragon friend. Luffy has a dragon friend. Into the chapter. So we have chapter 1178 titled Fading Nightmare. So this is kind of the chapter that not concludes Elbaf, obviously, because we still got some other things that have to get taken care of in Elbaf, but it's kind of concluding some of the big fighting in Elbaf. But first we have a cover page, which is just a reader request of Kid being chased by a bull because of his cape. And of course, Kid's cape is, of course, red. And bulls supposedly like to chase the color red, although I know the Mythbusters did a whole thing on this where it's just like, they just go after anything that's moving. Matadors and stuff like that just happen to use red initially, and that's just what it stuck with, and that's where the myth came from. Also, I believe one of Kid's attacks is a giant bull, if I remember correctly. It's a giant mechanical bull that he makes. So we pick up this chapter pretty much where the last one left off, with Luffy and Loki staring down Emu Gunko. So we're kind of cutting away a tad from that, and we see Frankie's group, or Nami's group, with Frankie, Sanji, and Jinbei each holding or pinning down the piece of Kiringham. And of course, we know that Nami currently has Zeus off to the side, just like sucking in as many of the clouds as he can and pouring rain as best he can to help try to put out the fires. We'll touch back on that later in the chapter. And we have Luffy flying this way, and he's like, hey! And Jinbei is just like, Luffy, and they get there. Luffy gets close enough, and Nami sees that Brook and Usopp are just so badly injured, and Luffy puts them down on the ground gently, because of course he wanted to get them out of there, because of course Brook got his ass handed to him. Unfortunately, his pelvis handed to him by Emu Gunko, unfortunately. And then of course Usopp, for all of his great speech that he had last chapter, he unfortunately got skullbone grasped by his own attack because of Gunko. So both of them are very badly injured, and Luffy got both of them to safety, taking the safety of his crewmates into priority over fighting Gunko, which I like. Gets them to safety to where the others are. Take care of them, and Jinbei is just like, what the hell happened over there? Or Jinbei or Nami are like, what the hell happened over there? And we have Frankie asking Luffy, and he's like, need a hand? And Luffy's like, if things get worse, yeah, but you guys better stay a little further back. And he's like getting revved up, and like Luffy looks very angry, because like, again, it's not very often that we see Gear 5th Luffy angry. He's usually very laughy and happy and bouncy. And Chip is growling, what's the matter? What's the matter? You dropped your toy. Here, have your toy. I love you. You're good, baby. Yes, you are. Your best baby boo. I love my baby boo. He's good Chip. And what ends up happening is, we don't see Gear 5th Luffy angry super often. But so it is kind of like jarring a little bit to see that, but it means he's still in touch with his other emotions, which is good. And he like revs up, and he's like answering, it's just like, cause Loki is gonna start wrecking everything. And Sanji's just like, that's the pot calling the kettle black, huh? Because of course Luffy's gonna go start wrecking shit. So we cut back to Loki charging up one of his giant lightning attacks, his Thornheim attacks, and he is aiming it at Gunko Emu. And Gunko Emu is just kind of talking while this is happening. And it's just like, a ship from the Giants was sighted many years ago, and its captain was of extraordinary size. However, those who moved However, those who moved while hiding within the deep fog targeted only the world government ships, and struck them down. And Loki fires the attack at Imu Gunko. And huge explosion, because of course that's just the way that it is right now with Loki. And Luffy's like scurrying back there, just like, I'm the one who's gonna blow her away. And there's like just smoke everywhere from the attack, and like Loki's looking around trying to figure out where Gunko went. She's like, she got away. Where is she? She's so tiny. I'm like, well, yeah, she's tiny compared to you. Everything is tiny compared to you right now, dude. You're making Elbaf look like a normal-sized island, which is a very, very difficult feat to achieve. And Gunko just keeps narrating. Meanwhile, at the same time, there were reported sightings of a giant flying creature. Those rumors were being told as if they were true. I see, it makes sense now. And, Gunko Imu is just still kind of, flying there with the bat wings. And it's just like, because, like, we know that Loki, 14 years ago after he just, killed Harald and everything, and, scared the crap out of Emu, via the bond. And, he went out and to go be a pirate at sea. That's what, Gabon and Shanks kind of suggested, and that's what he went to go do. And they were attacking government ships. And then we know about 4 years ago, or about 6 years ago at this point in time, 4 years before the start of the story, that Shanks had finally kind of tracked Loki down, did something, either fought Loki enough to get him to surrender, or was just like, okay, you need to come back to Elbaf now, type of thing. Whatever deal it was that they made, we don't quite know yet. But Shanks dragged Loki in and brought him back to Elbaf and chained him up to the tree, and that's where he's been for the past 6 years, is the general understanding that we have. From there, we know that, during this time frame when Loki was on the loose for about, 8 years that he was on the loose, he definitely probably had attacked some pirate ships, but definitely mostly went after the world government ships. So possibly any that held the tribute, any that held supplies going to the, to Marie Joie and such, others that possibly held slaves that were being taken there, different things like that. And Loki seemed to, for the most part, exclusively attack those types of ships. Which, I mean, considering that his grudge was against the world government, he knew that was involved in what made his father go crazy and start destroying everything. And, all of that. So Loki at least kind of knew some of that. And it was like, well, this is the information that I have to work with right now. And I can't really do much else right now. Although it would have been very interesting if Loki had just decided to been like, no, screw being a pirate. I'm flying to the Holy Land and I'm just going to torch the place. To be fair, now, in context of the story, this is before Shanks met Luffy. So it's not like he knew where the Sun God fruit was. It's not like he knew where Luffy was or that Luffy was going to eat it or anything like that. He didn't know that there was now this potential there in Luffy. Now, if that had been the case, Loki, Shanks might have been like, okay, it's not time yet to go and attack Marie Joie. There's a few other circumstances that need to be met here. Shirahoshi was only like 2 at that time. And different things like that. And of course, there's like this whole concept in regards to like the various prophecies that go on in the One Piece world, the Harley text and the mural and a bunch of other stuff that we've seen and heard throughout the story that, certain factors all need to line up. And it's not because they're predestined factors that like this is the exact time and place that these factors are all going to align. It happens to be this point in time, at this point in time, that the Mermaid Princess will be alive and she will have the power of Poseidon. That Nika will return in the form of Luffy with that power that the Nidhogg fruit will be eaten by Loki, that there will be enough displeasure and, willingness to fight back in the world against the world government in regards to like stuff being fueled by the Revolutionary Army, that there will be different factors all aligning to the point where there will be the right amount of fighters, strong enough fighters that can go and fight against Emu and the Gorosei and the God's Knights and however else that ends up working out, and can stand up against the Marines. There will be future generations already implanted in the Marines that will do the right thing in regards to like Sword and Fujitora and different things like that. And then of course there's the whole concept of just like, the Davy line and the Will of D and different things like that. Inherited will. Roger and his crew found out that they were too early for when stuff was gonna line up. And of course, Shanks maybe had some of that knowledge through his, other stuff Roger told him and everything. So we'll see what happens there. But, in this regard, Loki couldn't just go and destroy Marie Joie. How did I end up on this topic? Marie Joie. Loki couldn't, he could have very easily just flown up to Marie Joie and started torching the place. I don't think I don't know if Loki would necessarily care about the slaves that were there. He might be a little bit more like, okay, first I'm going to hit the giant castle. Then I'm going to start squashing celestial dragons, and let's see what type of fun I can have around here. Probably would have had to deal with the Gorosei, probably would have had to deal with the God's Knights at that point in time. We will be cutting back to Marie Joie at the end of this chapter, and we'll get a little bit of stuff that's been going on there. So it makes sense that Loki spent some time just attacking world government ships and different things like that. So back into this, Luffy is just so angry, and he is just making his way back to where Emu, Gunko, and Gunko, Emu, and where Loki are, and he's like, she's over there. How dare you do... Loki was trying to figure out where she is, and Luffy's just like, she's over there. How dare you do that to Usopp and to Brook? And he's just like racing up to them, and then Emu just like chest burster, black smoke thing, whatever, out of Emu, out of Gunko. And Luffy is just like, what? Luffy is just befuddled by this. Because, like, this happens, and Gunko's wings are gone. So either that's just, like, Oda forgot to put the wings on her. I mean, he had them in the previous panels when we see Gunko. So I'm assuming this is not Oda forgot to put the wings on Gunko. But, Emu is chest bursting out of her, and is still connected to her. Because, like, Emu apparently still needs to have some type of an anchor. We saw this as very similar to what happened on God Valley in the flashback, in the Rocks flashback, where Emu burst out of, or was possessing Saturn and kind of burst out of Saturn, and then, skewered Rocks and dummy reversied him. We're going to get something here in a moment. So Emu is just kind of popping out of here. Just still like the black blob with the crown and all that stuff and the spindly arms type of tendrils stuff. Popping out. And Luffy is just like, something came out of her. And Emu is just like, it would be most fitting if you were all to simply disappear. Just as Rocks did. Loki's gonna clock that in a second. And Emu is just, doing the tendrils one toward Luffy and one toward Loki, and is using, like the symbols that they used before to summon things to activate. And it's just like, a quarrel in exchange for a certain portion of your lifespan. I grant you even greater strength. And one of the tendrils skewers through Luffy's kind of stomach area, and the other one like skewers through like the top of Loki's head since he's still in his dragon form. And they're like, and Emu continues, in exchange for all of that, you shall hate each other. Domi Reversi. And like, this is probably okay, to be fair to the anime staff, this would be a fun panel to end on as the end of the episode, of making it seem like Emu is going to be able to Domi Reversi rock Loki and Luffy. Because, you know, Loki and Luffy have both now been stabbed the same way that Rox had, and the way that Rox got Domi Reversi'd and everything. So that would be like an interesting way, or at the very least, this would be like the interstitial cut type of thing in the episode. And then we cut and we see close-ups of Luffy and Loki's faces. It's a problem with them having very similar sounding names and both starting with L. Luffy and Loki's faces, and both of them, like, they're kind of sweating, but like, then, you know, Luffy just kind of kicks the tendril out, and Loki just kind of like shakes his head and gets the tendril out of his head, and Luffy, good lord, Luffy is just like, what did you just do? Huh? That didn't even hurt. And Loki is just like, what an annoying little thing. Hey, you there, you mentioned Rox earlier, didn't you? And like, we still very clearly see that like Emu is still connected to like Gunko. Gunko is just kind of like hanging there, suspended in midair at this moment. And Gunko is Emu is thinking, just as I expected, you two really are. Gets cut off because Luffy is just like, Gumma Gumma no, and he's going to get ready to do a Dawn Gatling, which I don't think we've seen before. I don't think we've seen him use Gatling in Gear 5 yet, but we're going to see it in a second. And now we're going to have Loki do a bit of a shift here. He's just like, now it's even smaller. I can't fight like this. And Ragnar is just sitting on Loki's head right now. Kiri, cookie. He's like, you know, chittering away and laughing. And, you know, Emu just kind of wide-eyed watches as Luffy is just Dawn Gatling through him, just like Swiss cheesing the, you know, demonic nigh on immortal ruler of the world. To be fair, Emu is probably going to be able to regenerate from this anyway, pretty easily. And Luffy, to be fair, Laufey is connected to Loki in the Norse myths. Loki has changed back into his human form. Ragnar has turned into Hammer and has turned into the Hammer. I'm going to make something to like decorate the end of this. I just haven't done that yet. Back to Hammer. You know, get Hammer with the squirrel face on it, which is adorable. And Loki is getting ready to, you know, he's like, you know, pulling back and getting ready to swing the knock to attack Emu, and he's just like, get out of the way, Luffy. And Luffy's like, wait, hey, what are you doing? Don't hit me. And Loki uses his Niflheim attack, which is the same one that they used on the Draugr down below. And I believe it has been stated that Ragnar has the ice abilities, and that Loki has like the lightning and thunder abilities, to kind of, you know, bring together Loki and Thor in that regard, and how that works. So they, you know, giant cube of ice is appearing around Gunko Emu. Luffy has skedaddled out of the way so he doesn't get frozen, and giant just thing of ice has appeared around them. And we see Gunko and then like the emu thing popping out of her chest. Gunko is just suspended in the ice. And Luffy is just like, oh, so that's how you do things, huh? And it's just like, but I wasn't done beating her up yet. And then Luffy just like deflates and he goes into like the old withered old man form, which is just funny. And Loki is just like, this cube of ice is quite large. I mean, like, Loki is such like a big giant anyway, and this cube looks like it comes up to maybe mid-chest or maybe Loki's shoulders, depending on the scale of things. But it's like, it's quite a large piece of ice for how big this thing is. And it's devil fruit ice, magic, you know, mythical devil fruit ice, so we don't know how long that's gonna last. The Galleria giants have been frozen for a long ass time, so Aokiji stuff is more Kuzan's ice is more subject to like being affected by fire, Punk Hazard being the main exception to that route. Just because like him and Akainu were fighting on Punk Hazard for like, what was it, like 10 days or something, for this battle for who was going to be the new fleet admiral, and they're pretty much both awakened Logia users anyway, so that's just, half of the fire island is on fire and molten volcano lava, and the other side is just ice. So yeah. So Loki is just like, no idea who that is. Still, I guess that was the fastest way to finish this. And I ended up getting way too big myself. So Loki is kind of like, he's used to attacking the ships, possibly in the dragon form a little bit, but also because he probably trained a bit while he was gone, learning how to master his dragon's, his zone forms ability, so that way he would be able to, use it later. Because it's not like you instantly eat your devil fruit and you master it right away. You have to learn how to interact with this power, whether it's like the paramecia, whatever form that takes, the logia for the element that you end up getting, or the zone in regards to whatever animal you end up getting. You need to have that. So, cutting away from this, yeah, Luffy is just kind of like deflated on the ground, which is funny. Please don't step on him, Loki. So we're going to cut around to a bunch of the different villages to kind of see what's going on. So we cut to the fisherman village, Elbath. We've got to put out this fire. We got to put this fire out fast. Sure, that bastard Loki took down the monsters, but cleaning up this mess is going to be a nightmare. So, like, we see, they're trying to put out all the fires, and of course we know that, like, Elbath kind of has, like, the fire brigades and stuff like that, and we're going to see Jinbei and Nami helping out here, and Lilith with the, little flying energy Roomba ice maker things that she has. And we cut to the hunter's village, Elbath. They said Loki wasn't the one who killed King Harald. I feel bad for doubting that before, but just look at this. Aside from that, he's always causing us trouble. And, we cut to, we see stuff is wrecked. We see one of the Draugrs, I think, is still kind of there. But, like, I think it's, like, Kiringham has kind of been defeated, so we kind of got the Nightmare Monsters have to kind of, like, wear themselves out. I think we see something else that looks like a beat-up Nightmare Monster as well at the Fisherman Village, so those still kind of have to fade away. And then we see Nami, and she's like, keep the rain up, Zeus, keep going, and, Zeus is just like, let it pour, he's just like trying to make it rain as much as he can to help put out the fire, so he's working there. We cut to Jinbei, who is using one of his, over-the-shoulder current throws to help, he helped put out the fire on the branch where the kids were so they wouldn't get hit by the fire. So he's, using that to try to put out other areas of fire, possibly utilizing some of the rain that Zeus is making, but also there's, various lakes nearby that they can use to help, put out those fires. And then, of course, we see Lilith doing, the ODC has, its limits, there's only so much that they can, they can only work so quickly. They're only a deus ex machina that Oda came up with because fire. They only work to a certain degree. They already saved the library and the school. What do you want them to do now? So we get to the Western Village, and this is one where we can see, like, Oust Castle in the background, and this is the village that's closest to the castle, and we can still clearly see that it's on fire. And we see Zoro's group with Dorian, Bragi, Hyrule, and Stanton, and they have, I believe it's Bragi that says, like, I think it's over, right? And Stanton is just like, we managed to turn them all back to white, so that's the reversey reference. That regeneration didn't help them at all. And one of the other giants that just got flipped back is just like, forgive us, chiefs. We got swallowed by that evil. And Dorian Bragi are like, it's okay. We couldn't resist it either. And like we see some of the other giants, there's just a couple left that are kind of, reforming the, damn you, chief, as they're still being attacked. And it's just like, how dare you? There are there are 2 or 3 of them left, so there's got a couple left, and like Zoro's getting ready to attack, and then Chopper pops up, and he just like backhands both of these guys, both of the giants that are there, and Zoro's just like, Chopper, because he's befuddled by this, and Chopper just like, punches these guys in the back, and out of the front of them pop like the dummy reversey demons. They land on the ground, they flop, they turn back, and then they're shifted back to normal. And then Chopper is just like, woohoo! He's in Monster Point right now. And he's like, Zoro, I did it! And Zoro's just like, what did you do? And Chopper is just like, I don't know either, but when I punch them, they snap out of that demonic transformation. I mean, Chopper's kind of, yes, there are all of these theories going around right now, or the main theory about, like, Chopper is, like, the forest god or the earth god, reincarnated, and then, like, because of that, because, like, his devil fruit isn't actually just, like, a plain human fruit, it's actually, like, the forest god or something like that. So that's allowing him to be able to, like, punch the demons out of the Domi Reversey. And Zoro is just like, could it be because you're such a great doctor? Which is adorable. By the way, this is just very much a Zoro-Chopper moment where Zoro is very proud of Chopper. And Chopper is just like, Zoro, look what I did! I don't know how I did it, but look what I did! Which is just adorable, and I love it. Just so cute. So we have that, and so Zoro is just like, oh, maybe it's because you're such a great doctor, and I think Zoro is like 100% believes this, and that could be part of the case because Chopper is a doctor and he wants to be this one that finds like this cure-all, and maybe part of that is why he's able to like punch the demons out of the Domi Reversey people, out of the giants or the other people who have been Domi Reversey'd. That would have been a very interesting case if somehow Domi Reversey rocks, Chopper shows up there, punches rocks out of the Domi Reversey. Garp and Roger are like, how the F did that work? What the heck are you? Rocks, I'm back to normal. Okay. Thank you. Reindeer? That'd be so hilarious if, like, Rocks is the one who actually looks at Chopper and goes, reindeer. Chopper, yes, I am a reindeer. I am not a tanuki. Yes, I am a reindeer. That would have been hilarious. And then Rocks is just like, thanks, reindeer. You're cool. Runs off, goes to find his family. That would be quite funny. Plot twist. Got that. But, like, Chopper is, like, he's like, I'm not happy at all when you compliment me like that, you idiot. So, like, Chopper is probably, like, doing his little dance that he does, which is adorable and still cute whenever he does it in Monster Point. By the way, I think I did mention this for the live action. Chopper is so cute in the live action. I love him. He is cute. He must be protected. Must protect. And so we have Hyruji, and it's just like, are we done here? What about the others? So he's checking, they're trying to get, like, checked in with the other villages. So we're kind of jumping around from one village to the next. And it's just like, no signs of the enemy at the artisan village. However, the fire is still spreading. No enemies on the alcohol village either, but the fire continues. So the alcohol village is still there. That's the village that, like, Loki, that Estrid came from, and that Loki kind of burned down. That village is still there. And we get, like, this great wide shot of, like, just, like, this ring of fire going around in the Sun Realm. As, like, it's burning away parts of the forest and parts of the towns and everything. And it's just, like, put out any fires wherever they're still burning. Also confirm whether the demons are dead or not and where they are. Very good, because if there's any other... Because, like, we saw the Draugr earlier. We saw something that looked like a weird demonic dog thing earlier, which could have just been a statue in Elbaf for all I know. I don't remember seeing a weird demonic dog thing as one of the, besides, Fenrir, but that was a wolf, not a dog, that the kids were afraid of. So yeah, they need to know where the other, dream monsters are so they can go and get rid of them. So that's important. Now we're cutting back to the Owl Library / Walrus School. So specifically getting inside the Owl Library. So Saul and Robin have made their way inside. And of course, this is the area that has just, like, been frozen over because of Lilith's devices and everything, sucking away all the heat and freezing the area. And Robin is just like, Saul, what does this mean? And we see them looking up, and this is like essentially like a very similar shot to when Saul first brought Robin and Chopper into the library earlier on in the arc. And they're looking up at the shelves where we know there were books the last time. And like the shelves and everything are just frozen. The inside of the tree is frozen. And they're just all looking up. It's just like, you can clearly tell there was a fire here too, but there's no sign of any burned books, and the shelves are completely empty. Because there's fire in this place and books burning, there would definitely be evidence of it. Oh yeah. And Saul's like, and Biblo the owl isn't here either. And it's just like, and like we look over at like the little branch where Biblo used to be, and it's just like, yeah, no, Biblo ain't there anymore. And Robin's like, but wait, let's not lose hope. What if he escaped with the books? I hope that's the case, but then where is Biblo now? So this was a thought that a lot of people had. It's just like, well, Biblo was in the library with the books. The teachers were in the school with the kids. The kids and the teachers all got out of the school. The Walrus School can be rebuilt. Its treasures are the teachers and the children. Children, teachers. That stuff can all be healed, fixed up, all of that stuff, and the school itself can be rebuilt better, with both stuff for the students to learn about the various, sciences and all this other stuff, all this, more humanization type things, not as in making them human, but having them connect with their humanity type of things. And then maybe bring in the fact of like having them trained to be warriors as well, so they can be true warriors of Elbaf, but also be able to be like ambassadors to the world in regards to what Elbaf can represent. And I think that would be a very good way of carrying that into the future. The library, on the other hand, the library itself can always be rebuilt. The books cannot be rebuilt. And Biblo, a living thing, cannot be revived. No, you already ate a devil fruit. He can't be revived to eat the books. He's, however many hundreds of years old of an owl anyway. So it is this question of like, well, so Biblo can make stuff grow. Does that mean Biblo can turn that power off and everything shrinks back to its normal size? Was Biblo literally running around the library, shrinking everything back down to its normal size and just like shoving all of the books into a giant bag? And all that stuff while nobody was looking, and then grabbed the other giant books and shoved them into a bag, and then had like one bag in each claw and like flew away on each foot and flew away? Is that what happened? We don't know what happened to Biblo. I would like to know what happened to Biblo. Robin and Saul would both like to know what happened to Biblo in all of the books. Because, of course, for Robin, those are like this last little connection that she has to Ohara, that the Ohara information was not lost. So we have that. Cutting back to Nami's group, and Sanji and Frankie are just kind of talking about, like, having dealt with Kiringham. Jinbei's out helping with, trying to put out the fires, and we see Nami off in the background working on the same thing. Sanji's not going to be super helpful putting out fires. Setting them, yes. Fixing them, not necessarily. Frankie isn't really conducive to trying to put out fires necessarily, so we'll see what happens there. But, like, yeah, Frankie is now the one holding Kiringham's severed head. And then Sanji is still pinning his upper body, and Frankie still has, like, Kiringham's lower body and legs pinned. I don't know what they're going to do with him. What they could do, if they kept any of the bubble guns from Egghead, what they could do is bubble gun each of his separate things, and then he can't, like, reform together because he's stuck in the bubbles. That would be good. So Sanji and Frankie are talking, and Sanji says, ever since that the counterattack began, things moved pretty fast. And Frankie's like, but it's not like we were fighting some massive organization or anything. Even if they were Knights of the Holy Land, there were only 3 of them. Still, just 3 people managed to throw all of Elbaf into chaos. And curing him is just like, what happened to Imu-sama, screaming out loud. I'm like, no, he's thinking that. He's like internally screaming that. Cutting to the edge of the western village, which is where Summers was squashed by Luffy after getting punched out by him. And we see like the giant handprint on the ground from where he got stepped on by Loki. Excuse me. He got stepped on by Loki after he got punched out by Luffy. As the disturbing old man that he is. And we see him on the ground. We see like because his head kind of got bifurcated when he got punched by Luffy. So it's like the top half of his head and the bottom half of his head where his mouth is, like nose and down, or like under his nose and down, or like there's like flopping around on the ground. And then we see like a mechanical heart sitting on the ground too. And it's beating, and assumedly this is Summers' mechanical heart of some kind. So maybe Summers had, when he was younger, maybe he had some type of a medical condition and he had to get a new heart. Given the fact that so many of the best doctors in the world would be living at Marijois to tend to, well, forced to live at Marijois in order to tend to any of the celestial dragons and any injuries or illnesses that they may incur, it would make sense that there would have been someone who developed a mechanical heart at some point in time, and then maybe that's what Summers ended up having, is this like mechanical heart. I hope Oda's not trying to make some type of a comment on the fact that he has a mechanical heart, so therefore it's not a real heart, so that's why he's such a horrible person, because science in our world has been working for a long time on ways to come up with different types of like replicatable and essentially like new organs that can be used for like heart transplants and lung transplants and kidney transplants and different things like that. Vegapunk touched on this with like the organoids that we saw at Punk Hazard, or excuse me, at Egghead, in regards to like be able to do surgery on someone and be able to give them a new heart or a new lung or something like that would still be compatible with their body. Because that is one of the problems that happens if you have like an organ transplant, is that even if it is the same blood type as you are and it is compatible with you, your body is kind of like, this is not my normal lung or my normal kidney or my normal whatever. This is not my normal thing. So your body tries to reject it. And I know that people have, scientists and such and doctors have been working on trying to make different types of essentially replicatable organs, so that way the people who are waiting on donor lists and stuff like that don't have to wait as long, because they can try to find a way to grow hearts and whatever in a lab in sterile environments, so that way they can then use those and implant them in the people that really need them, so they don't have to be on the waiting list so long. Summers probably was not on a waiting list for very long. He probably just jumped the waiting list in this regard. So he has this mechanical heart, and he's just like, damn it, come here, head, get over here. So it's like the head's trying to flop back, and it's like put back together. Ow, 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 ow. So he's just in pain. Good, you deserve it. And we got a little bit left. So now we cut back to where Luffy is, and Luffy is just like lying on the ground in the withered old man form, withered hungry form, and he's just like, okay, I need food. And Loki's just like, yeah, just go to the village yourself. I'm not going over there to get it. And what's with that appearance? And he's just like, squirrel, I need food. Curry. So maybe Ragnar will go and get him food. I don't know, but nobody's paying attention to the block of ice behind them, because we look inside the block of ice and Swiss Cheese Emu is there, and then Swiss Cheese Emu just kind of vanishes. Assumedly, Gunko is still physically there inside of the ice, so we might be able to use that as, like, stuff gets calmed down. Maybe Brook, once he wakes up and is feeling better, he asks, like, what happened to Princess Shuri? What happened to the lady that I was fighting? And they're like, she's inside of the ice block over there. And And they're like, what do you mean? How do you know her? And then maybe that's how we get like the backstory. And then something happens and like they get her out of there. Like they leave her partially trapped, but maybe they like free her enough that, you know, she can at least talk. That like Gunko can at least talk and she's not possessed by Emu at the moment. And then maybe interacting with Brooke would be enough to help bring forth her memories a bit more. So we'll have to see how that works. Maybe they can find some Sea Prison Stone handcuffs to put on her so she can't use her arrow powers on them. Again, I know there's so many different Straw Hats that have Devil Fruit powers, but it would be a wise idea to have a couple of sets of Sea Stone cuffs around the place. They have all the Sea Prism Stone chains that they had from Loki. If anything, they can just go grab like one of the giants, go grab one of those, just one of the random chain links out of that and bring it here, and we can just like lay it on top of Gunko so she can't do anything, and we can talk to her. Or something, so she's at least touching it or something. Last page of the chapter, we cut back to the Holy Land, Marijois, and we see Castle Pangea. Looks to be untouched, but then in the foreground, we see a bunch of burnt and destroyed ruins. Now, we know that the Holy Land went through a bunch of destruction when the Revolutionary Army commanders attacked it a while ago during the Reverie, and everything happened there, where Morley and Karasu fought against Fujitora and Ryukogu and everything. And then, of course, Sabo with, you know, blowing up the hoof of the Celestial Dragon and everything. And destroying the food stores and different things like that. So we already knew that the Holy Land was not in good condition. It was not in pristine condition and everything. And, of course, with, like, the barricades that the Revolutionary Army have set up, on the routes to Marijois, it makes sense for them to be able to be like, yeah, they're not getting in the supplies that they're supposed to get into, which of course has been mentioned several times throughout the story. We saw that in Egghead with, you know, the Celestial Dragons complaining to Akainu about the fact of like, I wanted lobster for dinner last night and I couldn't have it, type of thing like that. You know, we don't have bread, all we have is cake and all this other stuff. You know, all that stuff. So now we cut inside of Castle Pangea to the Chamber of Flowers, where we see Imu is now physically there. We know that Imu was still physically at Marijois because, like, we cut back before. That's probably going to be something that gets changed in one of the edits when this comes out in the Tankobon. Is like, because the last time I think we cut here from Imu's perspective when everything was happening on Elbath, because he said, you know, that Imu had said that the land was, Marijois was burning, and that's why he had possessed Gunko. So it, you know, but like when we cut back before, it didn't look like it was burning, so we'll see what happens. You know, that's one of the reasons possibly why they summoned Shamrock back, so, reasons. But what ends up happening is we cut inside the Chamber of Flowers, and Imu is just like, Gorosei. And we see one of Imu's like little servants off to the side, not Gunko, but a different servant off to the side. And of course we know that there's, you know, the transponder snail in the Room of Flowers. It's like, Gorosei, yes, Imu-sama. Mu shall withdraw from the Holy Land for a brief time. And they're all just like, what do you mean by that? What does that mean? It's like, we just get like the exclamation points and question mark of just like, wait, what does that mean? What do you mean you're withdrawing from the Holy Land? How does that work? So Imu just kind of wants to go for a stroll at this point in time. Imu has found, and we don't know exactly how quickly Imu can travel. Traveling into and to possess like Saturn or Gunko like we've seen kind of helps, but that's not fully Imu being able to go and maybe utilize their full powers. And we might find a difference between like a dummy reversey done through someone being possessed as opposed to Imu doing it in person. It may still have some of the same weaknesses, but they may not be able to be exploited quite as easily. We'll just have to wait and see how that goes. But where is Imu going to go? The Gorosei and the Gods Knights are like the only ones that know that Imu even exists. I guess what could end up happening, I guess there's always the possibility that the way this ends up happening is at some point in a different, you know, the next arc or at the end of Elbath, we might finally get like the reveal of what Imu actually looks like. And then, or it might be something where like Emu shows up, but we don't know that it's Emu because maybe they're, you know, they're not in like their silhouetted form anymore. So we don't know that it's them until later on. We'll just have to wait and see. There's no break next week, so we should have a chapter next week, and that should land on Easter, so that'll be fun. I'll be playing more Pokopia this week. I've got a couple of other videos to record that'll be posted later on. I don't really have much else for this. Emu's gonna go for a stroll. Emu's been stuck in Pangea Castle for like who knows how many hundreds of years at this point in time, whatever the last time was that they went anywhere. And I mean, like, yeah, the Room of Flowers is very nice, and going to the empty throne room every so often is probably pretty nice. But like immortal or not, living in this luxury palace with whatever you could want at your fingertips to a degree still does not seem, that is literally living inside of a gilded cage. And even then, it's just like, you can go and talk to the Gorosei or some of your servants or the, you know, the God's Knights, but none of them are going to disagree with you about anything. None of them are going to be like, Emu-sama, I don't know. I was just going to tell you that I don't think that color matches your eyes. Type of thing. I don't know. Emu is surrounded by yes men and women, not maybe you should reconsider something, sir, type of thing. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens. This would have been an interesting time to do the face reveal for Emu, but I don't know what else will happen with that. We'll see what happens. So, that's what I have for this. I thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye-bye.